Hi, I'm Genetically Modified Skeptic, and you're watching Atheist Edge.
Great.
Hello and welcome to Atheist Edge. I am Chris. I will be your host today, and we are talking with Berk Harbin, who is the director of the Wodens folk Kindred, an organization based in Waxahachie, Texas. Now, up here in Texas, we deal a lot with Christians and not a lot with heathens, which is how your group describes yourself.
Yes.
So would you help us out, kind of help us understand, because I'm sure when people bring up the term heathen, there's a lot of association with it. A lot of things come to mind. Can you kind of explain what you mean by the term, how it informs your belief, and so forth?
There's the popular etymology of heathen being people who come from the heath, and that's one of the reasons why we in particular prefer that. There are a lot of names, Ancestral, Wodensism, Formset, Ermenschaft, things that people use to describe them. Basically, they're the pagan, Germanic, Northern European pre-Christian beliefs, like the Celts, like the Greeks, the Romans. It's a Germanic belief. We in particular use heathen because being from Waxahachie, Texas, we're kind of country. And it has a connection to the etymology with the Old Norse word Heather, which means bright and shining. And the people considered that they were descendant of the god Heathen, who was the bright and shining god. So that's kind of on down the road, but that's basically why we choose that word.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about your organization, kind of what it does. It seems like, just from the bare minimum research that I did on it, there's a lot of community aspects to it, a lot of rituals and festivals that you guys do. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's basically it's a community thing. So the idea is that as far as religion per se, when our ancestors in Northern Europe met with the Christians had pretty much consolidated religion with the monotheistic thing, and so they needed a word to go with that. But it's more like a custom. Religion being, in my opinion, the opinion of the people that practice my faith, it's a cultural interface, kind of like the software to the hardware. Like if the world, is the hardware, then religion would be the software for your spiritual aspect. And there's a big community component of that because we live in communities. We live around other people. And there is overlap in things that normal religion would consider secular, but there's not. So we have the ritual aspect as far as the veneration, the honoring of the gods and our ancestors, but we also have things that are more relaxed than what you would see in a Christian context.
And it seems like there is being, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, there's kind of a effort on your organization to kind of bring back some of these older beliefs that have been kind of set to the wayside, kind of lost in the Christianization of Europe and Western civilization. You're kind of trying to get back to your roots in a sense. You think that's fair to say?
Yeah, and that's very fair. There are a lot of people who do this for different reasons. There are people who are into the thing for the cultural, and they want to see more of the cultural aspect come to the light. There are people who come to this from a spiritual aspect, and Christianity doesn't resonate for them. There are a lot of people who are kind of consider themselves atheists, even, that they don't necessarily believe in the gods per se, but they believe in the concepts of the gods as archetypes. That's probably the most popular opinion that you'll see with people that follow our faith for a while, is that it's more along the lines of what Jung talked about with the archetypes. But there is a variety of thought and outlook on those things.
Okay, but there are some people within your organization, because like you mentioned Norse gods. Some of the parts in your website talk about land whites and other kind of spiritual aspects. There's definitely some people who hold that those old gods are still, I don't want to use the wrong term, or they're still kind of active, they're still able to be accessed in some way by followers of your group.
Right, and the thing with the land whites, it's the spirits of the land. The idea is much like the Native Americans, how they felt like the land had a spirit, it had a feel to it, that you go to certain places and you experience nature and it just feels different, it feels good, and people assign that a spiritual component, the way that they felt about that, and they assign that feeling to the land whites.
So for a lot of our audience, we're an atheist channel, is atheist in the
Right.
name, and there's
Right.
a definite skepticism about supernatural claims. For your group, do you think that, at least for those who hold to a spiritual aspect of it, is it something that is evidenced in like an empirical sense, scientific sense, or is it more personal to the individual and something that how they feel, how they personally interact with the world?
I'm going to say both.
Okay.
There are a lot of people that practice my faith who are very much with what I like to call the mumbo jumbo, the magical aspect and the supernatural aspect and things like that. But there are a great many people who look at that and say these are phenomenon that we don't understand, but they're scientifically able to be explained. Things like the soul, things like spirit, things like these feelings inside of you, the difference between consciousness, unconsciousness, and subconsciousness. Things that have been empirically proven as far as the ability of people to influence things through thought and through intent. You kind of get off into what they call the noetic sciences. If you look at that and if you read that, you can see the parallels. But it comes back to also, you could call that beer, or you could call it beer in German or whatever the Japanese or whoever call it. It's the same thing, but you're looking at it differently in a lot of ways. But there definitely are people who are, hey, this is supernatural. You see that with the runes, where people talk about the runes, and Odin talks about I can chant the runes and I can make this happen. Okay, does he mean that he's actually saying these secret formula and the supernatural stuff is happening? Or rune also means secret. Does he know the secret, which is basically, does he know information that you don't know, which is not supernatural, it's scientific. He knows how to affect these things.
So this is something that sounds like it's up for debate within the community
Very
itself. I'm
much
sure you
up
have a
for
lot of
debate.
discussions
Yes,
around
it's
it.
very much, we'll sit around drinking beer around the fire, talking about these things. Sometimes it can get very heated, but
in the end, I guess kind of you're all. I filter everything to kind of through the lens of Christianity because that was how I was brought up,
Right.
and of course you have varying beliefs, but everyone's united under Jesus Christ and so forth. Everyone has that in common. So for your group, what is it that binds the whole group together? Like whatever you want to say about the runes or divinations or whatever, what is it that is universal to everyone in your group?
universal is a connection to our gods. Through our ancestors, that these are our ways. These are basically, it's kind of like dance with the one that brung you. This got us here, and you can look into Christianity and see what was taken out of Christianity from that heathen context and say, okay, this was accepted because the church didn't want it to be accepted, but the people would not reject it. So the people said this, and there are reasons for those things.
Okay, so tell us a little bit more about the ancestors, because it sounds like that's really important to you guys. How does that inform your rituals, your beliefs? Where does the ancestor aspect really come into play in terms of how you go about your business?
Weird thing where we believe that you're never truly alone, that your ancestors are always with you, somebody is always with you, so that it can be a very powerful thing for people. When you feel like you're alone, when you feel like you're depressed or everything's against you, that you can look back and say, you know what, thousands of people lived through blood, sweat, and toil to get me to where I am, and their spirits are still alive. The spirit is eternal, and the spirit never dies. So somewhere, somehow, I don't know how, but they're watching me and they're with me, and so I don't want to let them down.
So it's not like like there are some Eastern religions where people actually they'll venerate their ancestors in like shrine form, or they'll light incense or whatever towards their ancestors. But it's more, in your guys' case, it's more of a kind of a sense of knowing where you're from, and that's
No, it is more like, I guess, the Shinto, the Asian sense that you personally have a relationship with your ancestors. There's a thing, the D's here consider your female ancestral spirits, and the idea is that your mother loves you in this life and will do anything for you. When your mother dies, your mother does not cease to exist. Her spirit lives on. And so in whatever world, in whatever existence that the spirit of your mother lives on, she will continue to love you and she will continue to look out for you in any way that she can. And so people will, like this recent festival we had was, they call it Blow, and it's to honor the female ancestors of your line. And so we lit candles and just talked about, like I talked about my grandmother and the things that she had done for me and the feeling that she had for me, and acknowledged that, hey, wherever you are, your spirit, that I am thankful for your love that you have given me in this life and in whatever life you have now. Things along those lines. I mean, it's more personal than that, but in a broader outline, there is that connection to your ancestors who got you here.
Okay, so since you brought up festivals, let's talk a little bit about kind of what you guys do at your festival, because it sounds like it's a very important part.
We drink beer.
You drink beer? Well,
Yes.
don't need a festival to do that, but it's always a good
Yes.
part of any get-together. Seems like it's very calendar-based, based around the seasons, and so going throughout the year, summer, winter, how do you guys acknowledge those changes in seasons and mark those?
Okay, so it's basically divided down by halves into eights. They call it, the Germanic word is octaphon, which is a Germanic-ish word for a wheel of eight. You have the summer and the winter solstice, and you have the spring and the autumn equinox. And so you have, between those, you have what is called cross-quarter days, and that makes up 8 solar holidays. You'll see variation in the calendar because no place is centrally aligned astronomically. So when you have a spring ritual, it may be in early spring. It may be here in Texas. We really have a kind of spring-ish season. That's one of the variations that we have. They have a thing they would call winter finding, which in Northern Europe, winter finding is kind of like in September. Mm-hmm. And so we call it fall finding because we're really looking for fall about that time. In Texas, we want that to go away. So that's a regional variation that we have today, which there's people that take issue with that within my faith, that, well, you can't do that because that's not attested to in the calendar. Mm-hmm. We know that our ancestors changed things by regional variation, and we're here from Texas, and we do, it's Lone Star State, we do our thing.
And so what are your festivals entail, aside from drinking beer, which is the most important aspect?
That is
but what does your group do when you get together? Do you have any other traditions that happen every time?
Yeah, generally speaking, we have the main ritual is known as bloat. The connotation is blood. It's a sacrifice or an offering. Generally speaking, today in the heathen world, also true, the majority of people do not participate in a blood sacrifice. They don't actually kill an animal. You go over to the store, Kroger or HEB, and buy yourself some pork tenderloin and barbecue that sucker up. But the idea is the same, that you have this meat, you bless this, and then it goes off to be cooked. And then the people gather around and you pass the horn. Mm-hmm. The drinking horn is used because it's a node to tradition. You have our ancestors drinking out of these horns at a time when they had cups. And anybody who's ever drank out of a drinking horn can tell you emphatically that it is much more impractical than a cup. The reason our ancestors used a drinking horn at a time when they had cups for ritual was in honor of their ancestors. And you see that tradition passed on, like with the Greeks have a vessel called a rhyton, mm-hmm. which is, it looks like a horn, but it's cast out of metal because it's more practical than a real horn, but they wanted to preserve that tradition of their ancestors. So we will pass the horn around and everyone speaks. And the idea is when the horn goes around and you speak over the horn, whether you say a little or you say a lot, you put some of your essence, some of your words, the vibration of your speech an intent into that horn, and then it comes around, and that's poured into a bowl, and the blessing is dispersed, and so everybody shares in that. And so it's kind of operating on a two different levels. There's the deeper symbolic level, but then there's the communal aspect to it, to where, hey, I'm learning about you, what you speak, what's important to you, how you feel, and so later on in our lives we can relate to each other better. And so the blessing is symbolic, really, of what you have shared by speaking those words.
So it's an aspect of kind of getting the community to bond together, be united, and so forth.
Exactly. And so that leads into the following ritual that is called symbol. It's a cognate of Plato's Symposium. It was ritualized drink, and there's traditionally 3 rounds, and you pass the horn around. And you'd speak the first round for a god or goddess, the second round for an ancestor or hero, and the third round for a brag, boast, or hope for the future. And you just pass that around, and you say what's on your mind. But that promotes that community, unity, and understanding that you've obviously looked at.
Yeah. Another aspect I want to talk about, some things that came up, and I asked you for pronunciation on these, spay and sather. My understanding is, and by all means correct me, it's a way, it's about seeing the future, not necessarily with the means to affect it, but have some sort of sense of what's going to happen. Is that a good way of putting it?
I'd say it's a very good way of putting that. I don't do that. I don't know how to do that. I don't know if anybody can do that. I know it's talked about. But the idea is what you said, that, and when you go into the runes and the casting, the idea is that if you read about these things, it's not like a fate, like things are not set up there. So when people are doing this, and getting away from, I'll go back to the spade, but with the rune casting, what they're doing is feeling the weird. Weird is a cognate of our word, weird. It's considered to be the well, and all the deeds of people, everything that you do. When you see the tree in Germanic symbology, what that is the roots feed the tree. The idea is that your deeds, you are the tree, and the roots are your past. So when you do a deed, it goes down into this well that feeds the roots. So you're kind of building on your own past. And so when people would consult the runes or do spay, what they're doing is looking into that well and seeing all these things in the past that are affecting what's going on now. There are people who believe in witchcraft and that they can affect the future and they can do all that business. I myself am pretty skeptical because I don't see any of them winning the Powerball. Maybe I'm just selfish, but that'd be one of the first things I did. I feel like I would do humanity a lot of good with that money, certainly my community. But
yeah, from what we were talking about before, it sounds like this could be another subject that's probably hotly debated when y'all get together.
It's kind of touch it, but it is very hotly debated. It's because you can talk about things like remote viewing, prescient dreams, and things of this nature. It's hard to prove. It's hard to get. It's a very nebulous area.
Yeah, you mentioned helping the community, and we were talking just before about you were just doing a prison program.
Right.
You guys have some sort of, it sounded like some different community outreach. I don't know, that's a good term, but you go out. It's important to help the community, help your fellow man, and so forth.
Right. There's a big sense of nothing exists in a vacuum, that you get something good, you should give something good. If you want something good to come back to you, you should do something good. And so we try to donate to one of our causes is Battered Women's Shelter. And we try to give to that and try to volunteer with these guys in prison for a couple different reasons. We do this trash pickup. We have a Adopt a Highway program there on the Chris Kyle Highway, and we do that largely because it's a good thing to do. We want to put a good name out in the community for ourselves, for our faith, for our ancestors. Also, we're a faith that venerates the earth, kind of a natural thing, so it makes sense to us to go out there and clean up the earth and do that. Well, with the prison ministry, there's a couple of things going on with that. One, it's a good idea to help guys who need help. But two, there are a lot of people in prison who, and this is a touchy subject, that give a kind of militant and a racial aspect because of the tie-in with the ancestors. They use that. There are a lot of white supremacist groups and prison gangs who use that. And so that's one of the things that we try to go in there and curb with those guys and be like, oh, check this out. This is what you're doing this is not the context of these things. This is not what's going on. This is not how our ancestors lived. And point out various things in the lore that mitigate against that say, hey, look, yeah, this is a Northern European faith. This is your ancestors. These are your people. But they didn't go around doing all the stuff that you're talking about doing. And so I guess educating them and then providing them, services when they get out as far as rehabilitation counseling, reentry counseling, to help them ground themselves in the real world out here.
So to be clear, because there is, once again, talking about impressions of heathen groups, there are groups, like I believe there is a group that is a Wodens group out of England that has neo-Nazi group names, and they're against multiracial society, but your group does not hold to that aspect of things.
No, those guys pretty much kind of don't like us very much. We don't really care about them.
That's good.
They're in England. No offense to English people, but y'all are over there.
Yes, they can stay over there. Texas can keep doing what Texas does.
When the Germans start whooping y'all again, holler at us. We got you.
So I probably should have asked this earlier, talking about trying to reconstruct the beliefs. Do you guys have a sort of sacred text that you go off of? I know on your website they quote what the Roman historian Tacitus reports about the Germanic tribes. Is that what you're getting your information, your beliefs from? Is there another source that you guys go off of?
Okay, there are the Icelanders recorded a lot of the stories they call the lore. A lot of what we know about Germanic mythology, Norse mythology, comes from Iceland in two books called the Eddas. One is the Poetic Edda or the Elder Edda, and the other one is called the Prose Edda, and it's the Younger Edda. And so these books, one is a book of poetry, the Poetic Edda. The Prose Edda is a book about poetry, and it was written by a Christian, ostensibly to provide background information for aspiring poets who wanted to write in the traditional form. So it records a lot of things about Norse mythology. There are a lot of things about the custom, a lot of things about the belief. One of the most important texts is from the Poetic Edda, and it's called the Havamal, which means the saying of Har, the High One, or Odin. And it's, most of it's just real practical advice on how to live your life, things that are wise. It can be confusing to people because in one place it might say something that seems to counsel against something that he might be saying two different things in the same book, but the message is that you need to use your own judgment. That the same action in one situation can be good, and the same action in a different situation can be bad. So you need to learn to discern when it's good to do this and when it's good to do that.
Okay. Getting back to the community aspect of things a little bit, I can't help but notice that I've never had a heathen knock on my door at 6 o'clock in the morning asking if I have found Odin or found my ancestors or anything like that. Is your group...
We all have jobs.
I'm sorry?
We all have jobs.
For sure. Is your group... do you actually go out and seek new members? Do people come and find you? Is anyone welcome to come to one of your festivals or one of your get-togethers and find out more? Like, how do people come from the outside into your group?
We don't go out and knock on doors. We don't actively proselytize like that. we are a very public, as far as our faith goes, group. There are a lot of people, who are very reticent about doing things like that, especially down here in the South because of the Bible Belt and the Christian type thing. We're kind of unique in that our kindred is comprised of a lot of people who, I don't want to say people who are secure, because the background is either all the men in the kindred are either ex-military, police or ex-police, or ex-convicts. So you have a lot of guys who, hey, we're going to have a respectful thing, we're going to have a civil conversation, but we're not going to talk about it. It's going to be civil and keep the peace and keep in line with community. And so in keeping with that, we're more open about our faith than a lot of people with our faith are, because, they're afraid that, hey, Jesus is going to come stick some firewood under your bed tonight because you don't believe in God. So you have that aspect. As far as being open, our things, we post our stuff publicly, usually on Facebook for ease of things. Anybody who wants to come out is welcome to come out and check it out. When we do something like a ritual, it's basically, hey, you come out, like the dinner, the get together, the drinking beer aspect, you're welcome, come check this out. When we're actually doing a ritual, unless you believe what you believe, you don't have any business standing there in a circle with us. You can sit over there and watch, just, at that distance or that distance, it's fine. But there are a lot of groups out there who are very secretive of that because of, they feel, I guess they express they feel persecuted or whatever, and I'm like, I don't. I'm from around here, and I think everybody that I know in my real life knows that that's my faith. It's a little bit different, and I don't have any problems because of it.
Mm-hmm. And with the public nature of your group and this being Texas, have you guys ever had to deal with any significant pushback from Christian groups in the area, or is it mostly live and let live?
No, it's pretty live and let live. I've had individual people try to tell me about stuff, and it's a lot of it is how the person approaches me. I've had incidences where I've just had to, ask people, hey man, what day is it today? And hopefully it's, day of the week. It's Thursday. Well, hey man, thank you for honoring Thor, man. You have a good day, man. Holler at me when it's Jesus' day.
Okay.
Something of that nature. It depends. But most of the time, we don't really encounter that because it's not it's a problem, not a problem. Or you get a lot, have a blessed day, and a lot of people would take that offensively, get mad about it, and I'm like, yeah, you too, man, have a good day, and just drive on. Because, if you're secure in what you believe, you don't need to go messing with other people, Okay,
well, before we wind up here, is there anything else you want to let people know about your group? Anything that, any of the information you'd like to get out there?
Hey, we got a website, wodensfolk.org. We have a Facebook page if you're interested in discussion coming out there. If you're on the team that wants to convert us or whatever, man, don't waste your time. Don't waste our time, because most of us are old school country boys too, and you mind your own business and you won't be minding mine. But if you're interested legitimately, you want to have questions, man, contact us. We'll talk about it. No matter what your background or your interest and all that. It's information is information.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think a lot of the atheists in our audience would identify with the, hey, don't even bother trying to convert us. But
Right.
yeah, well, Berk, we appreciate you coming on the show.
No
Good to
problem.
have you. And thanks y'all for tuning in. You're good here? You're good to start?
Yes, sir.
All right.
It's fine, Courtney. One day we'll get the big photographer's white umbrella things when we get. Is it rolling? Yeah. Are they squared up? Any shadows?
Is it a little sideways? Is it just me?
Deal was kind of shaky, like
Okay.
the little.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, I can lean to the one side. That's fine.